Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today. I really appreciate it. I'd like to welcome Katie and Amy from Mass General Hospital. And they're here today. They'll introduce themselves more fully, but they're here today to talk about caregiving, as well as Emma Heming Willis's book, Unexpected Journey. And they'll answer any questions that you might have and talk more about the caregiver experience. And if you like what they're talking about today, they have two additional book events that they're going to be doing via Zoom on the 10th and the 17th of this month, which happens to be Caregiver Support Month. So there'll be lots of events going on all month, and that will be, those will be linked at ftdboston.org/events, and I will send that link out in our newsletter. And if you put your address, your email address on that clipboard back there, I'll add you to our newsletter and send that out for you as well. And I will also send out additional information about caregiver events that are going on in this area during this month. So thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. And I'll hand it off to Katie and Amy. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
So it's such a joy to be here today. Heather and I have been friends for 30 years, and so I'm always excited about what's happening at the library and love to connect with her. So my name is Katie Brandt. I'm the Director of Caregiver Support Services and Public Relations for the Massachusetts General Hospital Frontal Temporal Disorders Unit. And I'm here with my colleague.
Hi, I'm Amy Almeida. I'm the manager of the Caregiver Support Services at the Mass General FTD unit, as we call it. And I'm really happy to be here today to talk about the book with you and answer any questions you might have.
So just to give you a little background, the MGH FTD unit, we're a clinical research program, which means that we care for people at the hospital. You can show up and get a diagnosis. You can get your prescriptions, treatment, followed by a neurologist. But research means that the conditions that we care for, people who are living with frontal temporal degeneration, young onset Alzheimer's, other atypical neurodegenerative disorders like progressive supranuclear palsy or FTD ALS. Those conditions currently don't have any treatment to slow or stop the progression. So our team is dedicated to providing the highest quality of care while we work tirelessly to better understand and one day treat and cure these conditions. So we're a specialty unit at MGH in the Memory Disorders Unit, where, of course, people who are living with what we think of as typical Alzheimer's, right? The dementia, I think, that most people think of, oh, a grandparent, an older person. But really at Mass General, there are all types of caregivers. And that's what today is about. That's what November is about. It's about honoring family caregivers. And Amy and I are here to talk with you about if you're caring for a loved one with a neurodegenerative disorder or a dementia. We're going to talk, of course, about Emma's book, The Unexpected Journey, which I was so honored to be an expert contributor to. But we wanted to start today with
Katie,
a moment.
Before we start with the moment, I just want to maybe explain a little bit that when we say family caregiver, we don't mean like you have to be related. We mean anyone who is involved in that care. You know, Katie and I have seen teams of friends come together to care for a person with younger onset dementia who was single and whose parents had passed away, had no siblings. So we recognize that caregivers come in all shapes and sizes and relationships, and we acknowledge and applaud all of those.
Amy always says things so beautifully. And really keeping in mind, you might hear us say the person you're caring for, we might use the term patient, we might use the term person living with a diagnosis, or loved one. But we recognize, as Amy just said, there are all types of relationships. And so please know that if we don't use a phrase that honors your relationship, feel free to share it, share your situation if appropriate. But yes, we really understand that caregiving comes in all forms. We also recognize that caregiving is serious business. And so, did everyone pick up a handout when they walked in? If you flip the handout over and turn to the back page, you'll see here, we have a kind of a little disclaimer, which I think is important to acknowledge. So it reads, "We recognize that today's program may activate feelings and emotions. Breathing techniques can help you feel calmer and more in control. So we have a breathing exercise that we would love to do with all of you. It's very short, but it's called box breathing. And I think it might be a great way for all of us to connect as community members before we talk about some things that can be sticky at times.
It's a good way to describe it.
So if everyone could just sit comfortably. It's nice sometimes if you plant both your feet on the ground, feeling the earth. You can close your eyes or just have a soft gaze, looking at the floor, or your hands in your lap. If you're coming in, just make yourself comfortable. Take your time. Start to breathe easy. And I'll just guide you through this box breathing technique. So we're going to start by inhaling for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Try and hold your breath for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we all just take one breath together as we breathe in through our nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale through our mouths. 1, 2, 3, 4. Thank you. Box breathing is something that you can use anytime. You can repeat it as many times as you like to calm your nervous system. It can work if you're annoyed in line at the grocery store, if the person you're caring for is giving you a tough time with personal care in the morning, or maybe if you just want to do it before you fall asleep at night.
I've actually been doing that lately, and it's amazing. I can fall asleep so much faster.
That's great. I love that. It's better than doom scrolling.
Very, very much better than just scrolling.
Before we get to the meat of the book, I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk with you about something that we call the care plan trifecta. So we provided this handout today, and the PDF of this document is going to be available on email, and we'll make sure to share it widely. As I mentioned, my role in the MGH-FTD unit is working as the Director of Caregiver Supports. And I always like to say that I didn't come to this job through a job description, but in fact through a love story. So when I was young, I like to think of myself as young when I was...
You're young compared to me.
Yeah, you know, we're all young. Young is a state of mind. When I was in college, I fell in love with my husband, Mike, and we got married shortly after graduation. We spent those next 5 years after graduation building careers. I worked in the child welfare industry. Mike was a theology teacher, and we were excited to build a life ahead. We bought a home, we were expecting a baby. We were in our late 20s when our son Noah was born. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I know everything that's going to happen in my life. I'm going to be a parent, a community member. I have this wonderful partner. It's a bright and shiny road ahead. And at that time, Mike started displaying a lot of symptoms that made him seem unlike himself. He was impulsive, irritable, He was having trouble at work. He had interactions with the police. And when his annual physical came up that year, I went with him to the doctor and I said, my husband is acting so weird. Could he have a brain tumor? And she was the first of 8 medical and mental health professionals to misdiagnose him. But it wasn't until I took Mike to Boston, where he saw an expert neurologist, at the time the chief of cognitive neurology at Beth Israel, that Mike was diagnosed with the young onset dementia, frontal temporal dementia. So at the age of 29, I was a parent, but also a caregiver. Very shortly after that, we had an unexpected loss in our family. My mom passed away suddenly. And it was just a couple of weeks later when a diagnosis of young onset Alzheimer's disease was confirmed for my dad, Tom, who's a veteran. So suddenly, trial by fire, I was thrown into this role of caregiver, where I had no prior experience, training, or connection. I had lost a grandparent to Alzheimer's disease, but I really wasn't involved in their care. I didn't live with that grandparent, and I understood very little about it. I did not know that young people could get diseases that cause dementia. I thought that was something for grandparents. And I had no idea that while I was raising a young child, I would also be caregiving for sick family members. So I ended up leaving my work, my professional work, so I could be a full-time family caregiver. And then that had many other consequences in my life, where I needed support from Social Security and Medicaid and even EBT SNAP benefits. And when I lost my husband in 2012 and my son started kindergarten, I started to think, you know what, it's time for me to get back to work. But I had lost all my mojo from my old career. And I approached Dr. Brad Dickerson in the MGH FTD unit. He had been my husband's physician. And I said, I think you should hire me as a consultant. And he was like, what does that mean? He said, I want to do things for your caregivers. I think I could help work on your brain donation program, and I could help caregivers navigate the journey. I was already co-facilitating a caregiver support group. I wanted to plan community events that would bring caregivers together and help us raise money for a cure for FTD. So that was my entrance into the world of family caregiving. I'm still a family caregiver today, because 17 years later, my dad is still with us. He's living in skilled nursing care, he's on hospice, and I really benefit from all of the incredible training and support I've received. But Amy and I and many others in our unit and also at Mass General and in the caregiver community that's global, we want caregivers to know you're not alone, and there actually is a framework to help you think about approaching caregiving. So that's where this caregiver trifecta came in. So before we dive into talking about the book and having a caregiver discussion, Amy and I wanted to make sure that when you left today, you had like some tools, which actually Emma does beautifully in her book as well. But what I'll do is I'm just going to go over this idea of what is the care plan trifecta, so that you can start to think about how does this apply to my experience as a caregiver? How can it provide you with a framework, with more support? Just feel like you have a starting place. You know, I remember when I started caregiving, sometimes I would imagine myself standing on like a tiny island with like nothing around me, and I didn't know where to go next. So that has been a lot of the work that Amy and I do, creating this sense of community, so that when caregivers have a question, they know where to go to ask them. Okay, so let's talk about the care plan trifecta. It's a trifecta because I love talking about things in threes. But really, we focus on three main areas. So the first is the home community. The second, the first is the medical. You're like, what?
What?
I'm just excited about the home community.
The
So
home community is pretty much everything.
it's pretty much because care happens at home. The first is the medical community. The second is the home community, and the third is the patient advocacy community. So when you look at your handouts, that's how we set it up. Each page just gives you a brief overview. Let's start with just giving you an overview of the medical community. Well, this is something really where everyone starts, because oftentimes you don't know that you are a family caregiver. You don't know you're a caregiver until your loved one receives a diagnosis. But Amy, what do we say when someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, FTD, or a related condition?
That it's a diagnosis, not just of the patient, it's of the caregiver as well. And I think Emma Heming Willis makes a point, it's of the family. It's a diagnosis that gets applied to the whole family.
We're going to talk about this a little bit more, but there's actual data that shows that being a caregiver for a loved one living with dementia can be a threat to your emotional, physical, and financial well-being. And so throughout our discussion today, we're going to talk about ways that while you're caring for your person living with a diagnosis, you can also care for yourself. And in fact, the two are widely connected, because when you take care of yourself, you're better able to show up and care for the person who needs you the most. So the medical community is all about becoming connected with an expert provider who can diagnose the condition that is causing your or your loved one's changes, like behavioral or cognitive changes, and helping you identify, is there any treatment that I should be accessing? Are there research opportunities that would be right for me? And a huge piece of being a part of the medical community is that you connect the multiple providers that are a part of your life. Because, I don't know many people that only have one medical provider. Most people have a primary care physician that they're connected with. Hopefully you have a mental health provider. Even thinking about your dentist, your chiropractor, maybe you go to the podiatrist. And what's incredibly important is that if you or your loved one is living with a condition like Alzheimer's or FTD or related dementia, maybe you were diagnosed locally or diagnosed by your primary care, but we do have this amazing opportunity with Boston, not that far away. It can be incredibly important to connect with an expert in that diagnosis, even if it's just to get that second opinion. Or maybe you decide, you know what, I'm just going to see this person once a year for a consultation. Or I really can't drive into Boston, but I want to make sure that that expert provider is connected with my local primary care, so that when a new symptom or medication pops up, we have someone to consult with. So there's more that you can learn, but once you've received that diagnosis, you go to the doctor's office. Well, guess what? All care doesn't happen in the clinic. You're going to go home to live your life. So that's where we have the home community. The home community is really everything else. It's showing up at your public library to hear a talk from caregiver experts. It's finding out, hey, where's my local senior center? Where's my local adult day health program? Where's my local food pantry? Where's the memory care program or the skilled nursing or hospice program that I can lean on as my loved one's condition progresses? So home community is where you live your life. It's also the people who love you, right? Your friends, your family, your network. So the home community is really where you're going to think about, how am I going to get through my day-to-day and continue living alongside a diagnosis. And then, if you feel like you have a little bit of bandwidth, we want you to think about the third pillar. Let's see if I can put my sheet the right way. This page has some graphics, so it's a little more interesting. There we go. So when we say connecting with the third pillar, the patient advocacy community, what does that mean? Well, if your loved one's living with Alzheimer's disease, you would want to connect with the Alzheimer's Association. If you have frontotemporal dementia, you can connect with the Association for Frontotemporal Degeneration, and on and on. There are so many patient advocacy organizations. You know, AARP is considered a patient advocacy organization. Hilarity for Charity is an organization led by Seth and Lauren Miller Rogan. Some of you may have seen some of Seth Rogen's comedies. He's a celebrity who also is an advocate for brain health and caregiver support. So the idea is, if you have that diagnosis, and then you're connected with your home community, you might then be ready to say, okay, I want to learn more about this condition that is a part of my life. And what we want is for you to avoid
The midnight Google. That's when you need to do your box breathing, after you do the midnight Google.
We know what the midnight Google is, okay? The midnight Google is you can't sleep. You're anxious, you're stressed, and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to go on Google and I'm going to search the symptom and it'll make me feel better.
Never does, never does.
Yeah. So connecting with your patient advocacy organization can give you trusted information and educational opportunities, right? It can give you a connection for support groups where you can meet other people traveling the journey.
That's how Katie and I met, at support group.
Amy, would you like to share how you're connecting with the community?
Sure, but before we move off of this, I just want to emphasize that the Alzheimer's Association isn't just for people who are living with Alzheimer's disease and their family and friends. It is for people who are dealing with any type of dementia, and I can recommend they have a 1-800, you can write this down, 1-800-272-3900. That's their 24/7 helpline.
Okay, wait. Can we do a round of applause for Amy for memorizing the Alzheimer's helpline number?
Well, I mean, it's only taken me about 10 years to memorize it, so, but they are there, you know, when you have that urge to call Dr. Google, to check Dr. Google, call the Alzheimer's Association helpline. They have educated, trained, so mostly social workers on that line, who can help you get to the right solution, or just listen if you feel like you wanna share your feelings and situations with people.
Could you give us that number?
Sure. 800-272-3900.
No, this page.
And I think, did I include, and I included it as well. So the last page of your Care Plan Trifecta packet is resources for caregiver education. And the phone number is there. Look, we're in sync again.
Yeah, we share a brain.
Amy and I always share a brain. We're always putting the same info out there. But, you know, here we've listed some resources, some podcasts, some websites. But here's the thing. When Amy said 24/7, I want you to know that that is real. The Alzheimer's Association is open 365 days a year, including Christmas, Hanukkah, President's Day, you name it, because caregiving never takes a day off, and so neither do they. And we want you to really think about this in a wider sense, that there is a whole community of people out there waiting for you. If you haven't connected yet with the larger caregiver community, if you've never been a part of a support group, we want you to know there are people out there who will say, we know you don't want to be part of our group, but we're happy that you found us, because we're here waiting to support you. So I think that's a really nice overview of the Care Plan Trifecta.
Katie,
yes?
you almost forgot.
Oh,
No,
yes, go ahead.
so we have put together this year a 4-part webinar series.
Oh yeah, it's right here.
Oh,
So-
is that on the, you can follow the QR code? Okay.
Yes, so on the front page, if you scan this QR code, and if you don't know how to scan a QR code, Matt will do a demo about how to scan it at the end of the workshop today. But you can watch for free on YouTube a 4-part webinar series that Amy and I produced together, which goes into further detail about each pillar. It's 4 parts because we did 2 episodes about the home pillar because we just love it so much. So if you're interested, there are a lot of free resources about this.
And Katie, you had a question.
Oh, yes.
You basically covered the answer, but I wanted to raise it because I couldn't believe it happened. When we got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it was by a person, I forget his title or his name without looking it up, but it went through hours of testing. Yep, you got it, okay? So now where do we go? He says, that's your job. We had to figure out where to go, who to see, who to talk to. I couldn't believe that was after having heart surgery, cancer diagnosis, and having millions of people to refer me to. We didn't have a name as to where to go.
So what this, if everyone didn't hear, what this gentleman is saying, that you received a diagnosis, but then know where to go next. And it's almost like we have a plant in the audience, because that is the exact reason why Emma Heming Willis, wife of celebrity actor Bruce Willis, wrote this book, because she has shared publicly that when Bruce Willis received his diagnosis of FTD, their family was then just left on their own to figure out what they wanted to do next. But the thing is, there's actually a community of family caregivers who can help guide you and connect you and provide that care and support. So what Amy and I would love to do now is highlight a few points in the book that we think are, I think,
Very
meaningful
universal.
and universal, and invite you all to participate in a discussion with us as you feel comfortable. So if you are just here to be a listener today, we welcome that. If you are here today to ask questions, we want you to. And just know how much we appreciate that you took time out of your lives to show up here today for yourself, for the person you're caring for, and for everybody else at the Ashby Free Public Library. Okay, so if we look, here we go, Amy.
Your book?
Yeah, sure, here's my book. I've got a bunch of tabbies on my book. And it was a joy. I had the privilege of meeting Emma at a conference in Amsterdam. We were both at the International Society for Frontal Temporal Disorders conference. We met, and then we were able to talk over Zoom, and that was how I was able to contribute to the book. And I just love it. I feel like she really has got this idea of what caregivers need down pat.
Katie, you didn't mention that, her hearing you speak for the first time caused her to cry at the conference. It's in the book. And we're hoping that none of you will be crying at the end of this. Hopefully we can bring some education and maybe even a little joy by the end.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why we started with box breathing.
Exactly.
So the way we've sort of thought about structuring this is Amy will read an excerpt from the book, and then I'll give us a question. And if we feel like discussing it together, we will, and then we'll just move on to the next topic. How's that sound?
Okay, so our first topic is going to be about building community and connection, like we've been talking about. At my daughter Mabel's 6th grade graduation, each child had to get up and give a short speech. One of Mabel's classmates talked about the importance of community, and he started with this definition, which I thought was beautiful. Community, noun, a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. I was struck by this because I know that leading into the caregiver community was vital for me in making sense of this journey. It was the game changer I didn't know I needed, and for a long time, I resisted it.
So the question that we want to ask starts with a statement. Caregiving is not something that you can do alone. And this is the point that Emma makes throughout the book in so many ways, but especially in this chapter about community. And maybe is this chapter 3? So if you think about your own role in community, and maybe you are right here in Ashby, or maybe you drove quite a distance to be here today. Can anybody reflect on times when community has helped you in the past, or maybe how is community helping you in your role as a caregiver today? Yes, Jane.
So I met Sarah. We were in a couples support group through the Alzheimer's Association. And in that, we formed our own little subgroup of 6 women whose husbands all had a dementia diagnosis. And we're still friends, and we're down to unfortunately 2 husbands. They're still with us. And, but we still get together once a month, and the support that you get from somebody that's living with a spouse is invaluable.
And I think that, having people who can nod their heads emphatically, you're right, there's nothing like it when other people have walked the journey. And I like how you mentioned that you attended a support group for spouses, for couples. That's the idea of an affinity group. I actually wasn't familiar with that term until I started in the support group world. But that means that you could attend a support group that's just for caregivers, or you could attend a support group for spouse caregivers, adult child caregivers, sibling caregivers, friend caregivers, professional caregivers. So when we think about finding your community, you can decide what anchor of the community is most important to you. So you might say, you know what, what's important to me is that I'm from Ashby. And so I want to be a part of the Ashby Senior Center or the Ashby Library community. But someone else might say, you know what, when I think of community, I think of the fact that I'm a part of the young onset group. So I want to go to a young onset support group. So just think in your mind, like, what's important to you? And that could be helpful. Does anyone else have an example? Oh, yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, although in my case, we don't have a diagnosis. My husband's a little bit all over the place. He's showing so many symptoms, but brain images are not showing. So every time we go in to see a different doctor, there's so many neurocognitive, mild dementia, like all these other. But I was just going to say, because we've seen so many changes, our group of friends have been very supportive as far as, hey, let me take them out for a coffee so that way you can get some rest, checking up on us, or hey, can I just cook your meal so that way you don't have to do that if you need, to bring them to an appointment. So that's how I see my community step.
Gosh, I love that so much. And Amy and I talk about when we discuss the home community, one of the things we say is many caregivers report to us, oh my gosh, my friends have sort of faded into the background. And they'll say, I don't know what to do for you because I don't know anything about dementia. I don't know anything about Alzheimer's. But the things that you just identified that people are helping you with, going out for coffee, dropping off a dinner, those aren't actually about caregiving. They're about living. Right?
And supporting the caregiver.
And supporting the caregiver.
Your story reminded me, so we somehow, I skipped this, but I came to this world because my mom was diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia in 2010. And while we were waiting for the diagnosis and, in the first few years after her diagnosis, she had a regular breakfast group with some friends of hers. And they kept up going out to lunch with her. We ended up hiring a companion, and that was one of the things the companion did, which made, the companion seem cool to my mom because she was taking her out for breakfast with all of her friends. And I think having that that support from her community really improved her quality of life while she was able to do that.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna add something. My faith community has been very helpful to me. I tried going to a dementia support group in Manchester, New Hampshire. I live in Hollis, New Hampshire, not too far from here, half an hour. But it was all older people living with older people in Alzheimer's, and I couldn't relate. I felt bad for them, but I didn't think I could help them, and I didn't think they could help me. But my faith community has this thing called life groups, where we meet for dinner and we talk about the sermon in a little more detail. And I thought, I can't bring my husband to that. And I asked my friend who led one that was near us, could I bring him? And she's like, of course you can bring him. We've known him for years. Yes, we would love to have you. And I'm gonna try not to cry. The first time I went there, I'm like, this is the support group I needed, my friends.
Yes.
And they embrace my husband because they love him. They've known him for years. And he benefits from going to dinner, you know, we just get together, we all bring stuff, we all, you know, and even though he can't really participate in the discussion part, I think just being with friends is good for him too. So
And
that's been a good support for me.
I think you point out something as well, is if you go to a support group and you feel like it's not meeting your needs, go out and find another one.
Yeah.
I
because
mean, I
there
know
are
you
lots.
guys are seeing my face on Zoom now, because I do need a little more FTD help.
Right, but, if the, you wanna tell the story of the son?
Oh, we had, so in the MGH FTD unit, a lot of times we'll have adult-child caregivers that we work with. And we had this wonderful adult son, but he was in his early 20s. And he told us the same thing. He was like, okay, my dad has dementia, so I guess I gotta go to the Alzheimer's Association support groups. So he started going, and he said that he hated it, because everybody else was in their 70s, and he was in his 20s. Well, we connected him with this group called Lorenzo's House. Lorenzo's House, it has expertise in supporting families on the young onset journey, specifically spouses of people living with young onset dementia and adult children. In fact,
Well,
they work
even young children.
in young, I'm sorry, and children. So they work with children as young as 4, all the way through, I think it's early 30s.
Yeah, mid-30s.
But that son shared back with me that he met another son in his 20s caring for his dad in support group, and that they became friends outside of support group as well. And he felt so much more supported, so much more seen. So I just want to commend you for your bravery of saying, this group isn't right for me, but you kept looking for the thing that would be right for you. And I would say that if there does come a day where your husband's not able to go with you to that faith-based group, I bet there's someone in your faith community who might help you by supporting your husband at home so that you can continue to go to that group. But wow, what a great example. I love that. Yeah. It's really, really wonderful. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Kathy, and I wanted to just say that we have experienced a lot of what I'm hearing about. Dennis had a heart attack, and I was diagnosed with early dementia.
Alzheimer's.
And it was scary. Just the term is scary. And friends get scared about it because they don't know what to say. So they step back. And you don't have time to go soliciting friendship at this point. You have to be cuddled. And your life changes a lot. So I don't know what the answers are. I hope it's these people because Heather's spoken about her friends that she knew growing up, and she kind of said to Dennis and myself, hey, there's these books, they're coming out, and I respect her decisions in our behalf. I don't know if anybody else in the same kind of position that they would like to take and say something more, share it with some other people.
Before Sarah speaks, I just want to commend you for connecting with someone in your community, a trusted source. I mean, what could be a more trusted source than your library to find information of where to go next? So I just want to
And
commend
we're
you.
not from Ashby.
Oh, lovely.
But I want to say how lucky I felt through this journey to have Dennis there. My family is very good at supporting me, going to doctor's appointments, but the most frustrating thing that I have found, and I believe Dennis feels the same, there's so many promises made by doctors, and when you go to seek it out for real need, it's not always there for you.
I guess I have to comment so that you can't leave a story like that wide open. After we got the diagnosis and we didn't know where to go, we ended up in Concord. We live in New Ipswich, by the way. And we figured Concord would be a good hospital to go to, seeing her brother is on the board of directors. we get a neurologist, and I didn't even know what the word was, you know, neurology, until we had the diagnosis. Even though her father had it, her younger sisters got it, and her mother at 92 had dementia at this point. But we go to
A lot of
Concord,
aunts.
we go to Concord and we meet this neurologist, and the neurologist does a scan, and she says, oh, look at that little spot there. You don't have Alzheimer's, you got a tumor, and that's pressing on the exact spot that will give you the symptoms that you've got. We're gonna send you to Lebanon and have the surgeon take that out. Oh, she's crying, she's happy as hell, we're gonna get surgery and problem solved. We go to Lebanon, the surgeon comes in, he says, the heck told you that? This is nothing, this is a little tiny dot, but I don't even wanna take it out. He says, so now like I'm infuriated because I can't believe it.
Up and downs of
So
this.
anyways, long story short, we got rid of that neurologist, but not before. We went to Lebanon for another scan, because we weren't gonna go back to Concord. Sorry, my story's getting too long. The neurologist in Concord says, come to Concord for the scan, because, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. We go to Lebanon for testing. We come back from Lebanon, it's a 2.5-hour ride, whatever. We walk in the door, the phone rings, it's a neurologist from Concord saying, she just got the report on the scan, you gotta get into the emergency immediately, because there's something on there that needs to be addressed right away.
And it's, what was the term?
She didn't know, she didn't tell us at that point. So we said, well, can we just go to Peterborough, which is right nearby? Nope, either Concord or back to Lebanon. Well, what are you gonna do? Here's the neurologist in Concord, she said, and it's a Friday night, I'll have the emergency crew notified ahead of time. So we go to Concord. We sit in the emergency room for 3 hours, okay, for a life-threatening problem, okay? We finally said, to hell with this, we're out of here. We left. The next day I made arrangements, we went back to Lebanon, sat up there for a while, finally got in, and, you know, they did what they do best. Did all the tests, and they said, okay, we're gonna just keep you here for observation. Excuse me. By the way, the reason that we had to go to Concord for that emergency was there was a brain bleed, okay? And I can understand it could be
And
life-threatening.
I've never
But
heard
you
of
ought
a
to
brain
get them in when you get there. You ought to be able to get the person in. Anyway, they said, we're gonna observe and let you go. About 11 o'clock at night, the neurologist comes in and says, sorry, I can't let you go. We're gonna put you in ICU overnight and run some more tests. And he shows us the scan. He says, see that? There was a big brain bleed. So she stayed in the hospital 3 days. 6 months later, all of that was gone. There was no more brain bleeds. Point is that Lebanon was doing the job that they were supposed to do. And the end of my long story, I
And so
apologize.
were you.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And while I bet that other people who haven't had that exact experience, they probably have had similar moments where they felt frustrated, confused, unsupported, alone,
Not
lost.
smart enough.
So thank you for sharing that. Sarah, I want to let you.
So, what's your name?
Kathleen Gotham.
Hi, Kathleen. So, one thing you said before that kind of resonated with me was, friends don't know what to do.
No.
They don't know what to say.
Do you remember my name, they'll ask you? Yeah,
Do
because
you
they
know
think
who I
that's what.
am? Or- Well, my husband, he's complicated, but he can have primary progressive aphasia, he might have Lewy body, he's also got tau protein, but it initially presented as aphasia. So that's tough, you come over to visit and he can't talk and use words, but the saving grace for us, I think, is he was a musician. So we had a group of friends for years who played music. So they would come over and play music. And Janet's been to the house, and Tom first was playing, then he was listening, then I was playing, I became a musician. You know, you could hear me sing, I mean, it's not great, but it's fun. So that really became, so music, and I know Emma mentions
Yeah.
music, is,
Yeah.
and I was telling Janet yesterday, I went into the memory care where my husband is, and I brought my auto harp, and I started playing and singing, and people gathered around. I'm like, that makes me feel good, so we have a language. So that's all about that. I don't know if you're into music, or that could be a way to get together with friends,
I
or.
have no talent, but I love to sing and play.
Exactly.
That's right, that's what we're
And
looking
good
for. What do we
dancer.
love?
My husband, he was pretty good, and he gave me this auto harp. I was like, okay. And I don't care now whether, I'm good or not. I really don't. Sometimes you lose, it doesn't really matter. It's just that you're having fun. The other thing, just about all the different doctors, we had a doctor that my husband's trying to fill out that thing. What do you got? Diabetes, blah, blah, blah. Took him forever. We finally got in, and the neurologist said, I don't have time to see you because you took too long filling out the forms.
Oh, no.
This is a neurologist at Newton Wellesley Hospital. So my husband said, I'm not going back there again. So then it was another 2 years of me living with, I know something's wrong. So now we go to a neurologist that said we're having marital problems. And then finally we got to Dr. Dickerson.
Yeah.
So I would just say, yeah, you've got to follow a lot of. Oh, we had a neurologist that said, go to your house in Maine and enjoy Maine. Well, that's great, but,
It's far away from a lot of experts,
and
probably.
that's it, go have a nice relaxing time.
So I think that, both comments really speak to some of the things that are unexpected. Oftentimes when someone is diagnosed with a serious or life-threatening illness, you expect, well, the response is going to be sadness. But as Emma talks about in her book, and we've heard over many years from hundreds of caregivers, the emotions connected with caregiving can be complex. It's a wide array, and they can be tough. So Amy, why don't you share?
Yeah. So Dr. Pauline Voss, a professor emeritus at the University of Minnesota, has done groundbreaking research on the theory of ambiguous loss. She was also a caregiver to her husband, so she knows firsthand what ambiguous loss feels like. Ambiguous loss is an unclear loss, she explains. It can be about a person who is physically absent but psychologically present. For example, kidnapped children or soldiers missing in action. Or it can be when the person is physically present but psychologically absent due to some illness or condition, such as dementia.
Amy and I wanted to make sure that we shared this piece with all of you today because it's often something that our caregivers come to support group and they say they've experienced, but they didn't have a language for it. So it was something that we wanted to give to all of you. And Emma in the book talks about a range of emotions that caregivers experience, some of which they're ashamed about. And that coming to support group can be a place where you can share and know that you're not alone. You don't have to feel bad about having a range of emotions. And the question that we ask is, if anyone feels comfortable, are there any unexpected emotions that you've experienced as a caregiver? And what have you done to give yourself comfort or support when those difficult or unexpected emotions are present? Yeah.
Well, it's kind of on a tangential line, but my wife has dementia, and it's been a few years, and her short-term memory is brutal, right? And she'll fluctuate between getting angry, right, which is hard to deal with, but the other part is when she acknowledges that she can't do anything, and that's really sad.
And that's really sad. Yeah.
So I don't know how much to try to make her aware of it. Is it even worth it? I don't know. That's where I'm kind of, it's like.
I really love, there's a curriculum presented by the Alzheimer's Association called Habilitation Therapy. So if you go on their website, you can find resources about that. I've listed it actually on the resource page as well. And within that curriculum, they talk about feelings first, which is that your loved one sometimes, or the person you're caring for, sometimes they're gonna have an awareness about their condition. They might remember they've received a diagnosis, and other times they won't. And you might be wondering, as their main person, is it your job to remind them about their diagnosis? Think about what we heard here. Getting a diagnosis is scary. And so sometimes when our person we're caring for seems agitated or upset or scared, instead of trying to explain it, all we can do, or the best thing we can do, is to say, I'm here for you, and offer a hug, hold hands, maybe take a walk, enjoying something to distract you. Because going through that cycle of emotions over and over again can not only be draining for the person with the diagnosis, the person with cognitive impairment, but it can be draining for you as a caregiver.
I see that in her too, that
Yeah.
that if I connect with her emotionally, instead of just intellectually and try to
Yeah.
explain, and her cognitive ability isn't what it, right, so it's like, and even she wants to connect socially, but we'll be out with some people, and she'll elbow me, you're not talking to me, you're not, it's like,
So think about that. Think about how, experiencing love and support and connection can often be done even without words. And that's that personhood piece. But just you acknowledging it today, it shows that it's on your radar. And so I just want to give you that validation for that.
well, I have some friends, and they happen to be mostly women, who are really emotionally intelligent, they kind of help me along.
That sounds like great support.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we had a question in the back.
Yeah, no, I didn't even expect to find myself here today because I'm having an event here later, and I serendipitously saw that this was happening. I was like, I'll sit in for this because I'm actually the primary caregiver for my grandmother who has dementia, and I cared for my grandfather as well. They both lived with us, and he passed back in 2020, but she's still living with us. We live in Ashby. So I was like, this is perfect, I'll sit here before my event. But just on the topic of emotions that you don't expect to feel, I experienced that quite a bit because my grandmother, obviously with dementia and the short-term memory loss, the repetition, all the questions over and over, and it was really confusing for me, like you were saying, like, do you remind them every time, especially with my grandfather's passing, she'll ask, his name was Poppy, did Poppy die? Every 2 minutes, it seems, just over and over. And at one point I was like, I don't think I can keep, repeating this over and over, and, breaking her heart over and over. So I took it from like the position of love, like, okay, every time I tell her this, she is getting horribly sad, so I just started saying, no, he's okay. And then, it got lighter. So I think you just have to figure out what is best for your situation, and maybe that will change. But that was really confusing in the beginning, do I tell the truth? Do I tell her she has Alzheimer's? She knows she can't remember things, so navigating that. And just a lot of guilt that goes with that, because it's frustrating, to have to be asked the same question over and over. And I didn't expect to get angry or frustrated with her because I love her so much, I'm like, how can I have these feelings towards someone that I love so much? So that is very hard to navigate. And seeing her interact with my 4-year-old daughter, who she is now confused her for me. So seeing her act with her is actually this whole other sphere, because she's like calling her my name and thinks that she's me when I was little. So it's this whole confusing thing that I just never expected to be in. So there's just a lot of emotions you don't expect to feel until you're going through it, and I think you just have to navigate it. It's always going to be different for every situation.
It's going to be different for every situation, but I think, again, being with hundreds of caregivers over the past decade, the feelings are often similar.
Yeah.
And
I
while
never knew anyone who had gone through this before,
Yeah.
especially at my age. Like, there was no, I couldn't talk to anyone, so it was like, very hard to understand at first.
Yeah, we're connective, social creatures by nature. And so many times, people come to support group and we don't fix their problem. When they show up at support group, they're a caregiver for their person who's living with the dementia. And when they leave support group, they're a caregiver for their person who's living with dementia. But oftentimes, they share with us, and I experienced it, and I know Amy did too, they feel better because you realize, oh, I'm not the only one who's getting frustrated at the 1,000th question. Oh, I'm not the only one who wonders if this fiblet that I just told my loved one, is it a lie that hurts them, or is it an act of love and compassion protecting them in the space that they're in right now? And these are questions that there's no perfect answer, but you're showing up, thinking about your loved one, thinking about what you can learn, and thinking about yourself. And before Amy moves on to our closing question, I just want to point out the statement that we made at the beginning, that a diagnosis for the person you're caring for is a diagnosis for you too. And that caregivers of people living with dementia are at risk, even at risk for higher mortality rates. So one thing that we want you to take away today is that you need to put yourself on the list. There are awesome tips in the book, but one of which is when you're making medical appointments for your loved one or the person you're caring for, make a medical appointment for yourself too. Make sure your annual well visit with your PCP is on the calendar. Go to the dentist. Find out if you can connect with a mental health provider. Remember, caring for yourself is caring for your loved one. Amy, would you like to help us with our final question?
So I'm going to read two different quotes that are related and obviously related to the question. Look, as caregivers, we don't have much agency in terms of when or how dementia comes into our lives, but we have agency in terms of which lens we view it. We can choose to be angry, sad, and in our grief all the time. And trust me, there are days when that's exactly what I feel like feeling. Or we can break up our doom and gloom thinking. And the next is about how to do this. Oh wait, I think I didn't finish that one. We can break up our doom and gloom thinking. Yes, caregiving is hard, stressful, and scary. Yes, we are alone in so much of what we do day by day, hour by hour, but reframing this journey can make it a little lighter and brighter, especially if you have children or other people traveling it with you. And now, so in the pages between these two quotes, she talks about how she thinks about reframing her view. Now, because of this disease, the littlest things bring me so much joy than they used to. I appreciate it 10 times more than I did pre-FTD. That's the reframe. I make a conscious effort every morning when I open my eyes to connect to gratitude and think about how I can make that day rewarding. I do that for myself. I do that for our 2 children. I also do it for Bruce, who would not want it any other way.
And what we say all the time is just because a diagnosis has come into your life does not mean that joy has to go out. So Emma talks about this idea of reframing a journey that she had no control over, helped her move forward, both for herself and as a role model for her girls. You can think of it as a role model for other people in your life. Would anyone here like to share, just like we heard about making things a little lighter, a way that you may have reframed a tough moment that's helping you live life a little lighter?
I think just trying to be humorous about something that just happened, right? And her responses reflected that way, so then we can just let it go.
When I visit my sister, which is often because she's living alone with dementia, I bring my iPad and my phone, and I have pictures, and we go through pictures. recent pictures, back pictures, and she loves looking at the pictures. And sometimes she'll remember those moments, but like we just had a wedding in the family, and so I can't wait to show her the pictures from the wedding. And that brings her a lot of happiness. And the iPad makes it so she can see it.
Right, makes it easy.
Yeah.
You know, when I used to get angry with my mom, I tried to remember and make this my mantra, like, it's her brain stupid, like me being the stupid one, right? That you have to remember, she's not doing these things on purpose. She's not doing things to make me angry or to, you know, to tick me off somehow. It's that her brain is malfunctioning. And, you know, it didn't work all the time, but it did work enough to, I think, you know, smooth the journey a little bit.
I always think, like, if our loved one or the person we're caring for was walking around with a broken leg and a cast, you wouldn't say to them, ride your bike to the store and get me some milk, right? Because you would see that their leg is broken, and you would know they can't ride a bike, their leg is broken. But we can't see our loved ones' brains. I'd love to just leave us on a humorous note. I was thinking of humor.
I just want to, you know, like you hear this a lot about negative self-talk,
Yes.
about you know, and what I try to internalize this as well, is when you're saying something, you know, about yourself, like, oh God, I'm just the worst caregiver. Oh, I can't believe, you know, I let my mom have access to like a whole bag of Snickers bars and she ate all of them.
Yes.
You know,
wrong with that?
think.
Halloween was just...
If that's your self-care, I'm not going to judge. But, you know, think about, would you say something like that to your best friend? And most of us would not say something like that to our best friend. So try to you know, talk to yourself, use your self-talk in you know, a positive, supportive way, the best you can. Go on, now you can tell your story.
Right, and so Amy and I now run Caregiver Support Group online. We run it for caregivers of people living with FTD. So if you're caring for someone with FTD, please talk to us about support group. We run the support group online over Zoom, but the support group started by meeting in person at Newton Wellesley Hospital once a month. And when we think about how important it is to have connection, how important it is to have support and a place you feel safe as a caregiver, we know that caregivers sometimes will go to any length to get to support group. And so one night, it was a summer support group, and one of our support group regulars came in, a lovely woman caring for her husband. And I noticed that the dress she was wearing at support group seemed quite short. But I didn't say anything, because however people show up is fine.
They're showing up. That's the most important thing.
That's the most important thing. And as we went around the room, when it was this caregiver's turn, she stood up and she made an announcement to the group. She said, I am not wearing any pants. And in fact, that day was incredibly hot. And so she shared with us that while she was making dinner and getting things done around her house, she laid her pants over the ironing board with the thought that she would put them on before she left the house for support group. But she got so busy doing caregiving tasks that she looked at her watch and she said, oh my God, I'm gonna be late. And so she slipped on her flip-flops and ran to the car. And it was only when she parked in the parking garage at Newton Wellesley Hospital that she looked down and realized she had no pants. She said in that moment, she asked herself, what was more important? Being embarrassed that her long, it was a long shirt.
Tunic.
Being embarrassed.
Everything was covered.
Everything was covered. And being embarrassed about wearing a outfit that was slightly inappropriate or getting caregiver support. And she decided that getting caregiver support was the priority in that moment, and so she got out of the car and came into group.
Good for her.
And so what we wish for all of you is to be as resilient as that caregiver and to use humor to build connections and make new memories of joy whenever you can. Thank you so much for coming here today. Amy and I will be here to talk with you. Please sign up on the clipboard if you'd like to receive emails, and stay in touch with Heather so that you can find out more programs at the library to support you.